That's what she said.
Nice. Welcome back to the Obvious Choice podcast. We're starting with That's What She Said jokes today. What did you say they called you, a biscuit? What was that name?
No, nobody called me a biscuit, Jonathan. I was eating a biscuit.
You were eating a biscuit. Okay, that's what she said. So today what we're doing... So today I thought it would be really nice to kick back and push back on this idea that you shouldn't try to impress other people in your industry. Instead, what you should do is ignore people in your industry and try to appeal to your customers. I actually think that there's a lot of benefit in being the expert amongst experts. And that's for two reasons. One is it leads to a lot more opportunities, which can lead to a lot more business. Three reasons, actually. One is it leads to more opportunities, which can lead to more business. The second is that it might lead to other business ventures. And the third is that one of the ways that potential customers choose who they're going to work with is based off of status. Well, how do they assess status? Well, status in an industry is an important status indicator. And so I do actually think that there's a lot of benefit in being the expert amongst experts. And what I thought that would be really fun here is, and basically nobody knows about this, but I actually have a secret marketing newsletter. And it costs $100 and it's 10 of my favorite essays. And so we'll put the link in the description for this episode, please, Amber, if you want to check that out. But there's no marketing materials. It's just, if you decide this is something you want to learn from, check it out. But it's 10 of my favorite essays delivered once a week for every 10 weeks. And one of them is about this topic. And so I thought it'd be really fun to largely read from the essay. And then there's some other materials that I'm going to get into as well. But I want to talk about how you can actually become an expert amongst experts. And so, here goes. I was training my client, minding my own business, but felt like I was being watched. When 10 a.m. hit and I said goodbye to the client, my manager yelled for me. "There's the famous guy now," he said. "Hey, John, come over here." I was standing with him, and what I noticed was that standing with him was a young woman I'd never seen. But she was there to see me. She searched online for the best trainers in Toronto, found a feature at livestrong.com called 45 of the smartest trainers you might not know. And I was one of the 45. She was perfect client, strong training base, easy to start, eager to start, bought into the process, didn't care about the price because she was convinced that I was the best trainer that she could hire. Like, that's what the article said. And she didn't sign up at that point, but that was when it kind of hit me that actually becoming the expert amongst experts does help. So some people found me because of this Livestrong feature. Some people would reach out to me because I was in like the Men's Health Big Book of Abs or articles, Schwarzenegger or whatever it is. And then some heard my name from clients who never before gone out of the way to talk about me, but they started talking about me now. And the only thing that changed was that clients wanted to show off. The more attention that I started to get outside of the gym, keep in mind, I was training at a small little boutique studio in Toronto, Ontario. Like, there was basically no marketing. We didn't do anything outside of our neighborhood. Okay? The more attention I got outside of the gym, though, the better they felt about themselves and their decision for hiring me. We all have this secret desire to show off. It actually, I think, drives more action than any other motivation that I've ever heard of. So I argue this in my book, Filenomics. Selective self-representation is the most powerful drug in the world. We're all addicted to this drug. This is something I've never really seen written about before, but it explains why most advice on things like generating referrals is generally bad advice. Well, some clients will help you out of the goodness of their heart, right? And others will respond to some sort of financial incentive. Oh, here's a gift card, here's a t-shirt if you refer me somebody. Nothing beats the opportunity for somebody to feel better about themselves. We take action individually or as part of a community because of a deep desire to appear intelligent, interesting, intellectual, attractive, or funny. This is the basis of my book, Filenomics. I literally call it the IIIAF drug. And that's why Jonah Berger, a professor at the Wharton School of Business and best-selling author, he called that book a must-read for anybody who wants to win at social. Because this stuff is backed up by research too. The equation is pretty simple. If you want your clients to talk about you, give them an opportunity to show off. Give them a way to feel they're better or more in the know than their friends. So in my client's eyes, right, here's what happened. I went from being a trainer to a training expert. This is why media hits like that kind of matter. It didn't, I can't lie and say that this stuff brought in a lot of new customers into the gym because they like Googled it or like read about me in a magazine. I actually don't know if it ever brought a single net new client. None that I can remember. What it did do though, is it led to a lot of referrals. It made it so my clients were really, really proud to show me off. But here's the secret that I'll let you in on. Nobody who featured me had any idea if I was a good trainer. Not a single one had trained with me. Not a single one had seen me train. And not a single one had spoken to any of my clients. Think about how messed up that shit is. Livestrong, one of the biggest fitness websites in the world at that point, hundreds of millions of views, super respected, called me one of the 45 best personal trainers in the world. They had never seen me train. They had never trained with me, and they had never spoken to one of my clients. That's fucking messed up, isn't it?
Quite frankly, it's bullshit, John. I'm not gonna lie to you. A little angry about it.
I do believe that list was bullshit.
Quite frankly, I'm a little angry about it even now. I don't know if I'll sleep tonight based on how angry I am about what you just said. Please continue.
But there's still value in it, isn't there?
Yes, and I'm angry about that too, John.
So it brings me to a piece of advice I see more and more fitness pros offering to each other, which is don't try to impress other colleagues. Ignore their opinions. Focus instead, right, on your current and your future clients. And I don't disagree with this kind of thing. I think that in large part, especially if you're newer, yeah, that's really good advice. Like, you should not be trying to impress people who have never heard of you, who are in your industry, if you're brand new, because A, you're just not going to. The reason why impressing colleagues, the reason why reputation is so valuable is because you have to earn it, you have to be legitimately good. I mean, well, none of these people had seen me train clients. I had written about personal training. Like, you can tell when somebody's writing about something or creating now, like, short form pieces of content on stuff where you're like, yo, this dude's talking out of his ass. And you can also tell where they're like, okay, they have some experience. They've clearly done this thing before. I do think that at a certain part in your career, there is a tremendous amount of value to impressing your peers. I do think that the most valuable position you can have in your industry, in the fitness industry, in your industry, is to be known as an expert amongst experts. Now I'm going to let you in on another secret. The best way to achieve expert status in your industry has nothing to do with how good you are at your thing. The best way to achieve expert status in your industry is to help your peers succeed. The more you lift up other people in your industry, the more you will be viewed as an expert in your industry. People call this abundance mindset, whatever word you want to give to it. But I can tell you that the vast majority of everything that I've ever built in my career has been from a direct result of helping other people succeed. That's through actively sharing their content, collaborating, hosting events, bringing people in. I mean, what did we just host? I just hosted a massive digital summit. We raised over $25,000 for charity. I haven't publicly announced that yet, but we raised over $25,000 for charity at the first one, which is great. But what I didn't say is that, god damn, the obvious choice digital summit took a lot of my time, man. I am so happy that thing's done. Nick, who helped us with it, sent a debrief that I looked at today, and it was a video, and it was like next steps, and it was like, here's what we can do now, here's what we can do now. I'm like, yeah, I just need a little bit of time. Because this was 27 individual talks, which basically means I did 27 interviews, right, with experts. So that's 27 hours. Okay, quantify this. That's 27 hours. Every single talk, I did a minimum of 3 to 5 hours of research in advance. Minimum. Some of them quite a bit more. Some of them closer to 10, 15. I read their books. I listened to podcasts with them. I had notes. I was prepared for it. I would say that easily the summit was 50 to 100 hours of my time. And that was extra on top of everything else that I do. But, and in terms of like the actual audience growth and stuff like that, for the first one, it wasn't huge. It was largely internal. I mean, there was definitely a few thousand people from outside my immediate audience who have now been, who are now closer to me, who might be on our email list or whatever it is, who have now heard of me. So there's benefit there. And these things build up. The first time you host an event, it's never going to be as successful as the second, never going to be as successful as the third. Once you get into the third, fourth, fifth hosting of it, like your thing should have grown a fair bit. But what it did do is that it lifted a number of people that I was connected to. It lifted them up. It lifted up their status. And it introduced them to a new audience. Well, what happens is, I've got a closer relationship with them, but also my status is now raised up even more because I'm the host of this thing. I'm the dude on stage, right? Who's always at this. There is so much value in that. And this is why things like hosting events, collaborating, being the person to go out of your way to share materials in the event. Giovanni is one of my favorite talks. One of the things that he said in his talk, or in his interview, was how he helped a gym owner turn his gym into a multi-million-dollar gym. It was one of the first consulting clients that he ever worked for when he did that type of thing. And he said what they did is the gym owner polled all of the existing customers, all of the existing clients of the gym. And he basically said, let us know what services you use other than this gym, right? Where do you get your nails done? Where do you get massages? Where do you go for chiro? Where do you get flowers? Whatever, right? And then what would happen is there'd be a few common ones. So there would be a most popular flower shop amongst gym owners. There'd be a most popular whatever. And then what Giovanni worked with Chris is they would outreach to that shop and be like, hey, I'm Chris from whatever, I don't remember what the name of the gym was, but I'm Chris from this gym. Our members have voted you their favorite flower shop. I'd love to work with you to figure out a way to send even more of our members to your flower shop. And what they did is that they built cross promotions then with that flower shop. And the flower shop said to all of its existing customers, hey, our customer's favorite gym in this area is whatever, Chris's gym. Chris would send out and have bullet boards and stuff like that and say, our members recommend this flower shop. Our members recommend this massage therapist. Well, what happens there is a few things. Number one, what you will immediately figure out and I think get in front of is that if you do this type of thing, you are going to have to take the lead of it and you are going to have to actively do every single piece of work to the point where if you want them to post something up on their board or send an email out to their members or their clients or their customers or whatever it is, you literally have to write the email or print that piece of paper and walk it to their shop. Okay? You can't expect them to do anything. So you have to do the whole thing. But what's happening there is, number one, you're supporting your local community. Fantastic. Right? There's a line that I use in the Obvious Choice book that's now been added in where it's much better to be famous to the family than it is to be famous. Famous to the family, famous in your neighborhood. Right? Everybody's trying to get famous on the internet. Actually, the much more profitable point is to become famous to your family. And what Chris has done there, and why I thought it was so brilliant what Giovanni did, and why I'm not surprised that it helped him build a multi-million-dollar gym is, yes, to the flower shop, fantastic. Chris is promoting the flower shop, right? The flower shop is only getting promoted by Chris's gym because they're not the ones going out and promoting everybody else. But what Chris is doing is he's choosing 9 or 10, favorite restaurant, favorite coffee shop, favorite flower shop, favorite physio clinic, chiro, massage, right? Boom, 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 boom. Every neighborhood's got one of these. Even if 2 of your members go there, it's still the member's favorite. Wonderful. And then every single one of these places, right? So while there's only one marketing node going into them, what's happening is all of them are now pointing back to you. And if they're already your members' favorite places to go to in the neighborhood, they're probably one of, if not the most popular place in the neighborhood already anyway. And you've also worked backwards from your ideal customer. Your ideal customer are your members who are already spending money with you. How do you get more people like them? Well, you just go to places that they're already shopping, because there's going to be other people like that. So that's a way to do this, physically in the neighborhood. Or something that a friend of mine, Elizabeth Aveno, fantastic coach out in Ottawa, she actually specializes in, so her niche story is interesting. We've written about it. I don't know if you remember this, Amber, and you probably would have read the article too, but she's in Ottawa, she owns a gym, and she had basically 2 populations that she worked with. One was skiers and one was ultimate frisbee players. And she did an assessment of who is a more profitable niche to focus on. Skiers seem like they'd be a pretty obvious choice, wouldn't they? There's a lot more of them. Generally, people who ski have more money. I think that they're buckshit crazy, because why the fuck would you go to someplace even colder in the winter for a vacation when it's already cold where you are? But anyway, people who like to ski really like to ski. But what she found when she did an assessment was that actually ultimate frisbee players was a much better market, because nobody's there. Nobody's touching this market. And so she started going to ultimate frisbee events, and people who play ultimate frisbee seriously, they are all in. And so she started getting teams, and she blew up her gym by focusing on this market. Anyway, she was frustrated at one point with the lack of female speakers at fitness conferences. And so what she did, instead of just bitching about it and creating a video saying, this is unfair, right? She actually did fucking something about it. And she published a blog post that was titled, 39 Women Who Could Speak at Your Fitness Industry Event. And the list has grown now to over 100 names. And then she published a follow-up called An Open Letter to Fitness Conference Organizers About Diversity. Well, what do you think happened next? Number 1, she celebrated because she did a great thing, because she made it. Like, I've hosted conferences, I've hosted multiple fitness conferences, and I can tell you, less so now, but I can tell you when I was hosting these things in 2013, 2014, 2015, it was definitely difficult to find women in the fitness industry who were open and talented speakers, because they had not historically been given the same amount of opportunities. And searching for them was hard. You kind of had to be in the know. I'd ask a lot of friends and stuff like that, but it was really, really hard to do. I'm proud to say that all of our events, we did have a pretty good representation across the board, and I made a big effort for that with the Obvious Choice Summit too. Side note, I wanted to have a lot more women speaking at the Obvious Choice Digital Summit than spoke. Overwhelmingly, the people who said no and were much, much, much more difficult to work with were all women. And I don't know why that is. I think they probably just have a lot more demands on their time, because they generally have a lot more household responsibilities than perhaps the men do. But it was actually really difficult. I had a lot of conversations with Allison about it. I was just like, I wanted to have more or less equal representation amongst women and men. And the first 5 people who said no to me were all women. And it was just like, so I had to actively go out and find more women to ask. So it's still difficult, but it's still worth the effort for sure. But what do you think happened next when Elspeth posted this blog post? Right. Number 1, now she ranks on Google for this term. So anybody searching for this thing is going to find her. Well, she also wrote the list. So who do you think is the first person to be asked to speak at an event? That's right, Elspeth. Right. All of these other women featured in the list now owe her a debt of gratitude because they're getting asked to speak at more events. Their status in the industry has risen up, right? So she has improved her network as well. And it's just such a win for everybody. Right? So that's another way to become an expert amongst experts. Nick Mitchell, one of my favorite people in the UK, owns Ultimate Performance, which is just a killer personal training company. When I wrote this essay, they had locations on 4 continents. They might have more now. They've got locations in like 8 or 9 different countries or something. But Mitchell and his team produce a lot of content, both online and in books, for trainers. For example, The Principles of Muscle Building Program Design by Ultimate Performance is one of the best program design books I've ever read. And they did it with nutrition program design too. And they don't do any work certifying selling to trainers. But what this does is it's risen their status amongst really serious skilled trainers worldwide. And it's how they attract such top talent to be able to grow, to be able to expand. And so it saves the company a lot of time and expense of having to go out and find employees. So that's 3 examples where, you've got speaking at events, building a local gym, and finding staff members. Okay, Tony Gentlecore, one of the co-founders, Cressy Sports Performance. Now he's left and he runs a company called Core, C-O-R-E, in Boston, which is a training studio, and they're about to open up space actually to a whole bunch of other trainers to use it, which is awesome because he's had that plan for years and it got kiboshed by COVID, and now he's doing it, which is super cool. But each week on his blog, God, how long has Tony been doing this? 2010, more? Each week on his blog, he has published stuff to read while you're pretending to work. And he just highlights articles and posts from colleagues. It's as simple as that. If you're reading and consuming content from other people in the industry anyway, is there a way that you can publicly share a list of just the best stuff that you consume that week or that month or whatever it is? And then at the end of each installment, he promotes his own products and seminars and stuff like that. So when a fitness pro whose work was included in the post shares the link because their work is included in the post, the first thing that his fans then see is information that establishes Tony as an in-demand expert and sells Tony's stuff at the same time, and also grows Tony's audience and builds a relationship to that person. So that's another example of just like a guy on the internet that's reading other stuff from people on the internet anyway. And all that you need to do is just share that list in order to become an expert in expert. So the secret to becoming an expert among experts is literally to support other experts' work. And that might mean flower shops in your neighborhood, right? Down to, hey, diversity and inclusion, like Elspeth, to what Tony's doing. And then there's me, right? You have no clue how good of a trainer I was. Or you have no clue how good of a trainer I would be if I would return to it. Heck, you don't actually know for sure if I ever trained anybody, do you? Did you ever check? I have. A lot of people, of course. But if you were curious enough to check, how would you even do it? How would you find my former clients? How would you find my former coworkers? And yet, if I decided to open up a gym tomorrow and announced in emails and Facebook and Instagram posts and whatever it is that I'm accepting clients, I'm fairly confident in saying that I could fill a client roster by the end of the day, charging whatever I'd want to charge. And isn't that kind of blind demand the goal of anybody in business? Now, I guess this brings me to the secret about experts that nobody wants to admit. Because I think the idea of an expert is always such an interesting concept. Few people know objectively if the expert has any real actual expertise. And also few people care. Moreover, if you're perceived an expert, once you're perceived an expert in anything, you can position yourself as an expert amongst any related discipline. I don't talk about nutrition because I think that there's a lot of responsibility there, but I could talk about nutrition and people would perceive me to be an expert in it, even though I am in no way, shape, or form an expert in nutrition. I think I've got a working knowledge of it, but I've just never studied it. I've never been as interested. I like to live stuff down like a dough. And that's just, I've always liked the training component more than the nutrition component. But this goes beyond even related stuff. Like, why does anybody care about the political views of celebrities? It's a ridiculous notion, and yet those views regularly cause controversy, and they can sometimes even dominate news cycles. What I'm really trying to do here is help you with this process that I've benefited from, that I've kind of figured out over the years. And there's a few steps. So there's basically 3 steps, right? There's basically 3 steps that I'm going to share. But anything on any of that first, Amber, and that you guys want to kind of hit on before I get into these 3 steps of really how to establish expertise?
Yeah, absolutely. The phrase that you used at the beginning of the discussion, where you said becoming an expert in front of the other experts versus leaning your expertise towards clients, I think
Yeah.
I think rightfully you rightfully explained it in the way that you did, because a lot of the times a lot of the times when I give that advice to new coaches, what I'm effectively trying to say is, if you're communicating with your population, don't try to impress your peers with your knowledge of the subject, because it doesn't help your population better understand. Speak at the level of the people that will hire you, but conversely, it's absolutely important that peers think that you are a qualified expert. From
Yeah.
day one, it's super important. It's just most people do it the wrong way. They do it by trying to impress their peers with their knowledge instead of impressing their peers with their ability to collaborate.
Yeah,
That's
talk
how
about
you
me.
impress your peers.
Talk to me how you've done it, because you're starting to get invited by your peers at their events, and
Right.
you're like a black guy with no kids
Right.
being asked to
Right.
speak at, women specific events. Like, you're often the only
Yes.
guy, definitely the only male speaker at these things. How
Oftentimes,
does that come about? How do you think about
and
this? I'd love to know
and
specifics.
I did exactly what John explained here just now. Respecting, first of all, I was willing to learn from the actual experts in this area, and I was willing to learn from a population that I don't exist in. Right? Oftentimes, we come in with knowledge, and we want to share. We want to be perceived as an expert in an area of life that we don't have any experience in, and that can be cataclysmic. So what I did is I came in and raised my hand as a learner. I put a student badge on my forehead and I wore it around everywhere that I went. And I asked these experts questions, right? But the second thing I did is I shared them as the person who provided the answer and not me. I had a conversation with Amanda Thebe, and here's what she told me, and tagging them in the post. So even in my desire to explain information that I had, I always based it off of the person who gave me the information and shared their expertise to make sure that people track back towards them. I spend one whole week every 4 week cycle simply sharing information from people who are in line with the desires of the population that I serve. I think that oftentimes we overlook the ability to become. I think we want so badly to be Michelangelo or
Mm-hmm.
or any of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Renaissance artists. Pick. But I think we want so badly to do that that we look past the incredible benefit of becoming an expert curator.
Yeah.
Because not only does the art go in the world's finest museums, you know who else goes? The world's finest curators of the art. And if you can do that, you don't have to be a great sculptor or painter or poet. You just have to be recognized as the person that has an eye for them. And that's the way that I got into this place through what might be considered subterfuge. Uh, I shared the best, and then people just kind of started thinking I was one of them because
So
I was
that
always talking about them.
segues. So that segues perfectly into the first. There's actually the first of four steps here.
Nice.
Because step number one is have an abundance mindset. And I define this with one line that I've said over and over again, which is the expert doesn't have to know, he has to know where to find.
Yes.
An abundance mindset is a sign of confidence. By sharing the work of others, you help them succeed. And when you pull others up, you move even higher. You become the clear, specific leader in the category. That's why I say that the expert doesn't have to know, he has to know where to find. He does that by connecting himself to the sources of information he needs but doesn't yet have. So if you come across somebody who's really, really great, yeah, share them shits.
Share that shit, son.
Share them shits. Number two is to establish proximity. So pretty related. I always like the line by Jay-Z, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. Such a great line. The music manager, staying on the music theme, Shep Gordon, he was a master of establishing proximity. If he wanted to promote a new artist, he would have her pose for a picture alongside one of his existing stars. Jay-Z did something very similar with Rockefeller Records by using up-and-coming artists like Kanye West and Memphis Bleak on records with existing stars, including himself. Proximity is pretty easy to achieve, and it can be as simple as quoting notable people in your field or as complex as befriending and collaborating with them. But you can't do this with a lot of people, but it is actually pretty straightforward to do with a select few people. You go to their events, you support their work, you buy their stuff, you write down, like one of my good friends came out with a book 2 weeks ago. Michael Easter came out with a book called Scarcity Brain. Phenomenal book. His first book, Comfort Crisis, phenomenal book. And I was really happy for him. It hit the New York Times list in the first week, which is awesome. And I can't do this with many people, but I pre-ordered his book. I read it within the first 2 days, and they wrote a killer Amazon review for that book. And I wanted to do this because it really was a great book. There was somebody else whose book that I ordered and read it in the first couple of days, and I was like, the book isn't very good. I'm not writing a review. Somebody else who I know, who I won't mention his name. But, I'm only actually going to do that if it's good. I'm not going to, write bullshit reviews for stuff that isn't good. Because the other book, I was like, this is very disappointing from you. But, and I think he'll probably hit the list just because he has a big audience and he'll sell a bunch of copies in the first couple of weeks and then it'll fizzle out. Was Michael's books sell better every single week that passed? Because that's what happens with great work. But I didn't tell Mike that I did this. Well, maybe a day later I get a text message from him. Hey, so I'm reading my reviews. I know that I shouldn't read my reviews, but I'm reading my reviews and I just saw yours. Thank you so much, man. It means the world to me. Being somebody's biggest fan, and you can only choose a few people to be their biggest fan, but being somebody's biggest fan, oh man, they notice. And you have to legitimately be their fan. But yeah, dude, they notice. They really notice. And it means a lot. And you can't do that with a lot of people, which is why it means a lot. It's not like all of these folks who are like, hey, the best way to do well on Instagram is to, make a list of the 30 people that you really want to network with. And every single day you go in there and, you look to see if they uploaded. And if they uploaded and posted that day, then you go in, they write, great video, man, ! And then you go on to the next. And it's like, yeah, you only got so many bullets in that gun. People need a little bit more effort. The next step, I called it find a logical justification, which, looking back now, I could probably give a better title to that. But so many times I look back at my past work, I'm like, that is a really convoluted way to say a very simple thing. But people have an emotional desire to show off, but they also need to justify it logically to themselves. And so let's return to that breakout moment in my training career. When I started appearing in fitness industry publications, it wasn't because I was a good trainer, right? Remember that. That wasn't the point. I was selected because I had elevated my status by sharing the work of others every week in the PTDC's Best Fitness Articles feature. Every single week on Sunday at 6 a.m. for over a decade, we published a list of the best articles by others on the net. And so by achieving proximity to these people, by using a list like that, and by calling attention to many of whom who were not yet known, I gave others a logical justification for achieving proximity to me. And so I became, quote unquote, the guy. And everybody wants to know the guy. The guy is a gender neutral term. It feels good, though, to be in the know. The desire is emotional. Just to feel like we're able to show off because we know something that others don't. And emotion is always what's going to drive action, and then logic is going to justify it afterwards. And so the connections made by impressing your peers and supporting your peers and befriending your peers leads to those peers elevating your own status. When you show evidence of your elevated status with your clients, you give them a logical justification to do the very thing that you want, which is to boast to their friends that they're training with the guy. So the person who wrote this list, or who curated this list for Livestrong of the 45 best trainers, was somebody named Roger Lawson. Well, how did I get to know Roger Lawson? Well, Roger Lawson had a website called rajlawfitness.com. He called himself the Chief Sexification Officer. And Raj wrote great stuff. And I shared it, and we built a friendship. And then he was called in by Livestrong to do this list, and he included me. And then my clients saw that list, and they wanted to show me off because I was on that list. It all started by elevating my peers, proximity to them, and then they included me in the stuff that they were doing. And then my clients used that as a way for them to show off what they were doing. And then the final piece of this whole conversation, which is, I think, one that perhaps needs to be said a little bit more, is that the easiest sale you're ever going to make is selling to a colleague. Like, why do more people not talk about this? Fitness professionals are also the best fitness consumers. You know, think about it. They already believe in the value of what you do. They're already willing to put in the work. And they can't really argue on the value of it and say, oh, I don't value a trainer, because that's basically saying I don't value myself. And if they do say that they can't afford it or whatever it is, you can just call them out on that bullshit. You'd be like, well, what do you think when somebody says that to you? Oh, I tell them that it's important and that they have to, make the means for it and that they have to have a coach. It's like, you don't think that way? There's somebody named Joel Weldon who I met, complete happenstance. He's in the Hall of Fame of speakers. He's this legendary motivational speaker, like legendary motivational speaker. And I met him by happenstance. We were staying at my parents in Arizona at the time. This is years ago. This is when Calvin was just like toddling around. He was probably 1.5, 2 years old, about the same age as Jaden. And the golf courses in Arizona after dusk would turn into a public park. That was just like legally, like they were a public park afterwards. And so a bunch of people would take their dogs down there and use it as like an off-leash kind of park. And so we'd bring Calvin in there and he'd bump around and there'd be a lot of dogs and it was super fun. And Joel would come down to that area of the golf course. He just happened to live there and we just got to chatting and figured out who he was, and we'd see him all the time and I chatted with him all the time. One of the things that he said is, if you're selling success, you call on successful people. When you're selling improvement, you call on people selling improvement. When you look in the gym, who are the people in the gym? Fit people. The people already in the gym are going to buy more memberships, more books, more supplements, and more advice, even if they're not the people who perhaps most need it. And so if you're having trouble convincing people to buy your products or services, the problem might not be you or your message or your content or your training. It might literally be as simple as you're trying to sell to the wrong people. Fit people, people who work in fitness, understand the value of fitness. Selling converted not only pays your bills, but it also opens up additional revenue streams, possibly, that are available to those considered experts amongst experts. You think about Eric Cressy and Pete Dupuis and Tony Gentlecore, right, with Cressy Sports Performance, and how much continuing education they've created. And Pete Dupuis is now doing mentoring for gym coaches. You think about Megan Calloway, who I love, and a lot of the online products that she produces, pull-up products, I think she has one on hips as well. The vast majority of her customers are other trainers looking to learn. Yeah, her ultimate pull-up program grossed over $53,000 in its first months. And that was extra on top of her training. And, not like paid advertising and stuff. So a lot of that was profit. I just don't have the exact numbers. But many of her sales were to fellow coaches. Assuming that you're in this for the right reasons, I guess the biggest point in this whole conversation is that the advice not to care about what your peers think, I think, is misguided. Not only should you care, you should work to impress them, and I think you should work to elevate them, because when that happens, you'll become an expert amongst them, and there's no more valuable place to be in business. MC?
It's good stuff, man. I'm hesitant to add anything to it because I think you put a nice punctuation
Okay.
at the end of the discussion.
There was another part that I wanted to get into here that I don't think that I'm going to in this one. Maybe we'll save it for another episode, which is basically just like how to connect with the biggest names in your niche and how to become their biggest fan. I think, and it gets into like the problem with networking. Maybe we'll hit that next time we record. We're not going to record tomorrow, but maybe we'll hit that next time we record. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I think it'd be really good.
I've got some input there for sure.
Okay.
I couldn't be further from the experts in my niche. So if I could do it, anybody.
In terms of like how to actually, I see. In terms of like just like pure demographics.
Yeah, a Molly Galbraith, a Dr. Stacy Sims, and a minute. Like I'm as far from the experts in my niche as you could possibly be. I'll never be at the restaurant with them. We'll never have tea. We'll never have discussions about being women. Or like I'm as far from them as you can be. I've got some stuff to share there for sure.
Which I think almost is like part of the appeal with you, though.
It is.
That you're not stereotypically somebody who would care about this, but you have such deep, important, valuable reasons to care about this, and you've committed yourself to learning so much that there's something really appealing and special there.
I'm telling you, it's the Eminem theory. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I say that a lot, and people are like, I don't get it. And I'm like, well, you don't know hip hop.
What's the Eminem theory?
Marshall Mathers, man, he's arguably one of the best lyricists of all time in hip hop. Arguably, has one of the best deliveries as far as delivering the lyrics in the context of a song.
Yeah.
He's not somebody who's trying to pretend to be a part of something that he isn't, and by virtue of that fact, he is seamlessly a part of the culture.
Right.
And it's a good lesson for people who are an unusual part of a well-established niche or population.
He's found a new place in that world.
Found a new place.
By filling in a gap that nobody knew was there.
Right.
In that world. There were a lot of, I mean, I imagine with Eminem, with Marshall Mathers, like, there was a lot of white people who liked hip-hop at that time who felt like they didn't belong.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, now it seems ridiculous because now there's so many white hip-hop artists, but at the time there was not.
It's a clear differentiation from the forcing of a Vanilla Ice versus the seamless respect and genuine interest of a Marshall Mathers. It's two totally different things. So I'm excited to have that conversation.
Yeah, okay, so we'll hit that one next in the next episode. So if you're looking for another episode to listen to right now, I dialed in on episode 55. It's called Guaranteeing Your Good Luck. And the reason why I chose this episode to recommend to you is because this is one of those episodes where we kind of accept that nobody is out there going to make it happen for us. We're on our own. If you ever launched anything into the world, you will attest that everybody who said that they were going to support you mysteriously disappears the second that you put your thing out into the world. And at first, that can be really hurtful. But then over time, you start to realize that that's the case, and it becomes actually a very powerful, actually fulfilling thing to know that you're on your own and go out there and crush it. And so in episode 85, Guaranteeing You Good Luck, we talk about how to take responsibility for your own success, knowing that nobody's going to show up on, a unicorn and ride into the sunset with you and support you. Like, it's up to you, but here's how you make it happen. And so that's episode 85. In the meantime, please do me a favor if you're listening to this on Spotify, scroll up near the top. There's a place that you can rate review with stars. Just hit the 5-star thing there. Give us a review. And if you like this episode, like I said, I do have a secret marketing newsletter. I don't really ever promote it, but it's $100. There will be a link in the bio description if we don't forget to add it, which we do sometimes. And that'll take you there. Amber's got a sticky note, so that's cool. I hope that you enjoyed the sound quality as well. We've had a lot of complaints about my sound quality, and I finally got a new mic. So hope that it's a lot better. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you're good. Always a pleasure to be here with you, and we will talk again soon. MC?
Bye-bye.
There it is.